Thank you. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. I thought it was my job to provoke you, and then I walked in halfway during the previous debate, and if that wasn't provocative, then I don't know what it was. I don't know what it was. It's a pleasure and an honor for me to be here and attempt to provoke you in 10 to 15 short minutes. So walking over, I thought about how to provoke you, and as an Estonian, I thought the most provocative thing that I could possibly do was to walk up here and tell you that things are going well. Nothing to worry about, it's going to be okay. And then I realized that it would be a fairly short speech and perhaps too provocative, so I'll just step a few steps back and give you a lengthier perspective from Estonia. So I believe democracy is in crisis. It is in crisis not because of any particular politician or political movement, but because of profound change that is affecting our societies. It's driven by technological change. And then in many ways, the change that we're experiencing today reminds me of the 19th century. I, too, am several hundred years old. What was happening in the 19th century? Two things were changing. The way we work changed, with industrialization, bringing millions and millions of people from the countryside to the cities, changing the very fabric of Western societies. And the true advent of mass media, the newspaper, changed the way we communicated with each other as human beings, as societies. Those changes were rapid enough to undermine the legitimacy of almost all the institutions that we had in place back then. Extreme turbulence, old ideologies collapsing, new ideologies emerging, eventually undermining the stability of absolutist monarchy, destroying it, giving rise to nationalism, eventually leading to World War I, World War II, you know the rest of the story. But look around the world today and look at what's changing. Technological change, the advent of the internet, the AI. What is it really changing? The way we work, the way we communicate with each other. And if anything, we're only scratching the surface of this change. So if past gives us any clues to understand the future, I would suggest to you that the turbulence we're witnessing in democracies today pales in comparison to the turbulence that we are about to witness. We're only scratching the surface. Now, the good thing is that all of this is affecting not just democracies, but all systems of government, authoritarian regimes as much as democracies. And if anything gives us democracies an upper hand, it's the fact that over time, we've been proven to be more flexible, easily able to adapt to change. Now, before you get your hopes up, I do need to remind you that we are in a competitive environment. And our adversaries, our competitors, our opponents, they get a vote. They're actively undermining us internationally as well as within our societies. Nowhere else is this as evident as in the war against Ukraine today. Now, when you look at the situation in Ukraine, you might look at it as if we had reached a sort of plateau. Not much new is happening. Rapid change happened in the beginning of the war. Unthinkable things became thinkable. The European Union started providing military assistance to Ukraine. Unthinkable a few years before. Ukraine actually put up a fight. According to many observers, unthinkable a few years ago. Finland and Sweden jumped into NATO. Rapid change. But now it appears as if we've reached a plateau. Both sides push forward, attempt to achieve success, but there appears to be a stalemate. We may get used to this stalemate. My message to you is that plateaus don't hold. They don't last. They end. Wars end. All wars do. They end when one side or the other determines that the strategy they pursue is no longer viable. And then that side loses. And when that side loses, rapid change will happen again. Think back to the wars that Europe has experienced. The Second World War, the First World War. Rapid change. With history always moving forward. Now, some hope that if only the war in Ukraine were to end tomorrow, we'd be able to go back in time, magically, to February 23rd, 2022. Ladies and gentlemen, that's not going to happen. The day the First World War ended didn't take us magically back to the last day before the Archduke was shot. We went forward to a fundamentally changed Europe and a fundamentally changed world. And the day the Second World War ended didn't take us back to the last day before Hitler invaded Poland. We went forward to a fundamentally changed world. For some, the change was maybe positive. For others, it wasn't. My country disappeared. One of only 3 countries in the world that was a member state of the League of Nations that when the lights came back on in Europe did not reappear and become a founding member of the United Nations. Fundamental things had changed. So, dear friends, this war too will one day end. No question about it. The question is, how will this war end? And when this war ends, depending on how it ends, we will have a fundamentally changed Ukraine, a fundamentally changed Russia, a fundamentally changed European Union, and perhaps most importantly, fundamentally changed de facto norms of international life. Those norms are not shaped by the elegance of the speeches that our leaders give, or even by the action that we undertake. Those norms are shaped by the results that we're able to achieve. Depending on the results of this war, we will either have territorial integrity remaining as the cornerstone of international life, or a norm that under certain circumstances, a bigger power can change its smaller neighbors' borders with force. And if that ends up being the case, then show me on the map of Europe or on the map of the world a border that remains secure, a border that remains legitimate. At the conclusion of this war, we will either have sovereignty remain as cornerstone of international life, or, depending on the outcome, we could go back to a time where some countries' sovereignty is limited by the so-called, quote-unquote, legitimate security interests of their bigger neighbors. I'm addressing you here in the birthplace of democracy, in the beating heart of Europe. We, Europeans, should know better than to play around with certain Pandora's boxes. You want to go back to a time where great powers divided up continents between them? You want to go back to a time when some attempted to buy themselves stability by feeding the aggressor the freedom of others? And I'll guarantee you catastrophe for all. Some Pandora's boxes are better left untouched. And at the conclusion of this war, we'll either have a situation where international law de facto applies, or a situation where, under certain circumstances, aggression as a tool of statecraft pays off for the aggressor. And if that's the case, then no one is safe. Looking both at the challenges that confront us domestically because of technological change and the international challenges that confront us, let me end with this message. If we want democracy to survive not just as an artifact in a museum, then we have to fight for it. And if we want an international system based on agreed upon rules that actually apply, then we need to fight for it. Ladies and gentlemen, it's not going to be okay unless we make it so. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Jonathan. So, ladies and gentlemen, there we have it, a government official provoking us, two philosophers coming back to enlighten us, and there is a director of a national gallery with her artists from Greece, Spain, and Portugal waiting for us downstairs so we can see what these artists will do to our senses. So let us walk downstairs to meet Ms. Ciara, and then we'll come up again for some cocktails and food. Thank you.